You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Life is not easy. It never was, and it never will be. A good life takes grit. Prioritize who you are and who you want to be, because life isn't fair, and a little grit can make all the difference. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. Brent, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Today's podcast is with our friend Ryan Lampers, also known as Healthy Hunter, and he runs the podcast Hunt Harvest Health. You should know who he is. He's a cool dude. And he and I just got back a couple months ago from New Zealand, where we hunted tahr and chamois and anything else we could find. And consequently, we didn't find anything else. But it was a cool hunt. And today's podcast, we talk about that. Also today, we have just released the first video of that hunt, and we have a 4-part series from that. I think it's about 30 minutes or so.
Sure.
It's a cool video. Go check it out. You can go to our YouTube channel, check it out. It's part 1 of that hunt. We put a lot of work in the filming, a lot of work in the production, so check it out.
You should go see it. Luke almost died for this film.
Yes, Luke Dusenberry, who is our cameraman here at Mountain Ops, and then he freelances for Gritty when we have a project. And Luke went out of his comfort zone going to New Zealand. We about killed him.
Brian brought forth misinformation and swindled the young lad.
I'm just trying to shape a young man into a man, to a grown man. Luke was awesome. He definitely got put through some advanced mountaineering, backpacking, hunting.
He's talented, folks. You go watch it. You won't be disappointed.
Well, come on, dude. I produced the film.
You did all right.
He did the yeah, I filmed a lot of it too. But anyway, the film is out on our YouTube channel. Please check it out. And please share it. If you go watch it, please share it, if you can, or tell your buddies about it, because YouTube doesn't really promote your hunting content very well.
No.
So it's really cool if you can leave a comment, that helps with the algorithms, help push the video. And then if you can share it, on your social platforms, that's awesome, or through email, whatever. So we really appreciate that. And let us know what you think. We're having fun producing these videos. They're a lot of work though. Also going on right now, we have a coupon code for Mountain Ops.
Yep.
That we just put back into play. Back in the beginning when I started Gritty, we had a coupon code for Mountain Ops. It was Gritty. And it's the same code now. GRITTY.
GRITTY.
Put in that code when you're shopping at Mountain Ops, and you'll save some money. Also, we have a code for Sissy Sticks, or by Big Sissy Gear. The trekking poles that Ryan Lampers and I have been using on a lot of these recent hunts.
Yeah.
And then on this New Zealand hunt, we use Sissy Sticks. They're a carbon upper, and then aluminum lower. I like the clip lock. I don't like twisty locks. I think they fail too often. It's a nice clip lock. They're sturdy, lightweight, because you're combining the carbon with the aluminum, and they feel great, but they're just tough and they're durable. So, folks, check those out. They're great poles. We should
have grabbed them. They're right there.
Yeah, we've been having some great experience with them. If you're in the market for a new set of poles, you'll save 15% off, because we're friends with Sissy Sticks now. I didn't know them in the beginning, and I was very skeptical of the trekking poles.
Why, Brian?
I just am kind of skeptical of everything in general. So I wanted to use them and beat the hell out of them and really, really put them to work before I ever recommended them. But they're a great pole. And, the guy that runs it, Bryce, and owns it, he's a hardcore hunter, small dude. He's just kind of doing this on his own, launching a product. So it's cool anytime we can promote somebody like that instead of it being Black Diamond or some REI brand or something like that. This is just a homegrown dude with a cool product. And they went through a lot of testing and designs to come up with this. They really wanted something for hunting. And one thing I'll say is, when you're carrying a heavy load, like 100 plus pound loads, a lot of your REI backpacks aren't built for that, and neither are their poles. And what I need is something that's really stout and that can handle loads.
Brian, what would have happened on this trip if you guys would have had a shoddy pole and it cracked on you up there?
It could be, you can watch the film, but it's those Southern Alps in New Zealand are unreal. We really needed ice axes for some of the stuff where we got.
You guys really needed a watch. You guys are coming off that mountain at like 4 a.m. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, Ryan and I talk about it on today's podcast. We definitely get into some dicey situations. It's easy to see how you could get killed or hurt really bad up there. Or
lightly maimed.
What an adventure. And we've learned a lot. Next time we'll be more prepared and make better choices. But nonetheless, it's I hope you really enjoy this podcast. We met in a park in Pocatello to do this podcast 2 days ago. Ryan is going hunting in Nevada for mule deer for 2 weeks. He's already there. He's already in the thick of it. His season has started. Myself, I wanted to get to him before he left completely.
You had a 24-hour window to sit down with Ryan, and he was gone in the wilderness for a week.
And we just kept, missing each other. So we got together in Pocatello a couple hours from here. I met him on the way. Supposed to meet in the afternoon, but he kept pushing it back until we met pretty much after dark in Pocatello in a park that you're not supposed to be in because the cops showed up and told us we had to get out of there.
He was really sweet, though.
He was a cool cop, super cool, and wanted to know all about our hunting show.
It was funny. He was like, "Is it live?"
I know. Yeah. So it was really cool. We got the show recorded. We had to dodge the sprinkler system, which totally snuck up on me with the headset on. I didn't hear it come on, and it got me like a fire hose.
They got attacked a couple times by sprinklers. Yeah. So if you notice the background changing all of a sudden, that's why.
Yeah, if you're watching it, yeah. But we kind of bounced around a bit. So Brent sort of split this podcast into two parts just to make it more accessible for the listener, where he divided out kind of the cost of the hunt, some things about travel, bringing a gun into the country, sort of more technical travel type logistic things he put into one episode. And then this episode that you're listening to right now, this episode is actually kind of from a high level view, how the hunt went down. What were some of the struggles? What were some of the things that worked that didn't work?
What do you do different next time?
What will we do next time? Yeah. So they're split up. So you'll get, hopefully both podcasts give you great information. Like I said, one's more logistics and cost.
One will give you a taste for the hunt, and one will help you do the hunt.
Yeah. A lot of people are asking us, how much did it cost, and how much money did you spend? And in a nutshell, you can do a trip to New Zealand and hunt tahr and chamois and fly your trophies home and do the whole trip for under $3,000. And we'll break it all down. And it's actually a pretty amazing experience. I can't go to Prince of Wales and hunt bear for, like much about the same, bunch of hunts I've done Kodiak for blacktail or even blacktail on POW. The most expensive part of New Zealand was the airline fee.
Yep.
Just the ticket to New Zealand.
And Ryan got it cheaper than you.
Yeah. So, yeah, thanks. So anyway, I think you're going to enjoy this show. So, one thing we want you to do, if you would, is go to briancall.com and sign up for the newsletter so that as we produce this content, we can just send you a letter and say, hey, there's a new video out. Check it out. Because we don't put out videos every 2 days on YouTube like some YouTubers do. We don't put out content that frequently there. And so we don't really benefit from algorithms and things like that. So, our message is really throttled on Instagram too. So, and Facebook. So if you go sign up for the newsletter, dude, we can just email you when we have a cool code or a cool, video that's out, and we don't bombard you with emails at all. In fact, we should send out more and we don't. So, anything else, Brent? I think that's it, right?
Code newsletter, buy a shirt and buy a hat.
That's always appreciated. And that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty. All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm here with my good friend Ryan Lampers, also known as Stealthy Hunter, and we're in Pocatello, Idaho. That's weird.
Yeah. How did we get in Pocatello, Idaho?
well, folks, we're actually, it's in the middle of the night. We're in some park somewhere, and we're using the artificial park lights to light the camera. The camera's a little grainy over there. It's a little dark outside.
I can imagine. I'm hoping we don't get kicked out of this park tonight.
I know.
I think it's only during daylight hours, but we'll see.
It's not a very hopping town. Maybe we'll slip under the radar.
Yeah.
Today's podcast is going to be about New Zealand, and we had a fast-paced New Zealand hunt. Like we didn't really take a moment to spare to do a podcast when we were there. We really didn't have a moment to do it.
No, and we took separate flights out of there. Yeah, it was tough. We had planned on doing it, but it just, one thing led to another.
Too many skulls to boil.
Too
much meat to butcher.
I was so tired at the end of that. I was up 2 nights in a row just scraping and bleaching and wrapping. And
yeah.
It was good.
And Ryan is headed out to an area of non-disclosure where he's going to hunt for mule deer and perhaps slay a giant.
Hopefully, man. This would be a 4th year of heading into the great state. So going down with high hopes, but we'll see. Totally new area. But, man, I am ready to go. Bow shooting great. Feel like my legs are ready to climb the mountain, so we'll see.
So that thing is huge.
Look at that thing. What is it?
Ryan has a giant.
It's practically a hummingbird.
Except it's an insect.
Except it's a bug.
Yeah, you're headed down there to chase mule deer. How many days?
I'm going to have about 3 days of scout time prior to the hunt, which opens up on the 10th. And then I'll be down there through the 20th. I got to be back. My daughter starts school on the 21st. So,
nice.
Yep. I got 10 days of hunt time, and then it'll be an all-night drive coming back. So hopefully can get it done. I'm going down there with a guy. My focus is to try to help him get a buck. I'll keep my bow strapped to my back for a while and really focus on trying to get him a good one. And after that, if we can knock one down, then I'm going to go for it. So we'll see.
Nice little mentorship here. Is that what that is?
Oh, no. In fact, the guy that I'm going with, it's a funny story. He reached out a couple of years ago, and he mentioned, he's like, hey, I got some points for Nevada. Would you mind going in with me on a hunt? And I just thought, oh, he'll forget about it, right? Like,
right.
Who does that? Because I got no points I've drawn. And so a year went by, and I thought going into season he'd probably forget about it. And he, very responsible guy. He was getting married. He had things that he had to do. And dude, he reached out to me before tag season this year. He's like, hey, you still want to go in on that hunt? And, I thought he was crazy. He had all these points, and he could get a really good tag. And it's like, man, I mean, yeah, I'd love to put in and draw something. So we kind of put our heads together, figured out what hunt would work. His expectations, and it wasn't a tough tag to get. We kind of knew we'd get it, and we got it. So we're going to go down there, and he's really accomplished on elk. He's killed some great bulls. I think the high country mule deer thing early has eluded him.
Yeah.
So he just wants to go down and learn stocks on every day.
Learn from someone who knows how to do it.
Well, yeah, it'll be fun. I've had some fun times in Nevada up last 3 years, so this will be year 4.
Well, Ryan's on his way there right now. Pocatello is about 2 hours from Fruit Heights. So I cruised up here to meet you, and it took you all day to get packed.
We had planned on meeting midday.
The sun should be out.
Yeah, I am really late. Just one thing led to another with the kids and Hill's work and everything. But, yeah, I just got out of there really, really late. But it is what it is, and I'll just drive all night and get there in the morning. So,
well, I wanted to get you on the podcast before you left till the 20th because I really want to talk about this New Zealand hunt and put a show out. We're launching the videos basically in a couple of days from this podcast being recorded. let's get into it. Let's talk about New Zealand, because there's a lot of people firing away with questions, and this is our chance to answer all those questions.
Perfect. No, that's good. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with that trip. It was a trip that I had a ton of questions going into it because, never being there before. You'd been there before once. Mm-hmm. But, going to a different country and chasing critters you've never chased before, man, yeah, a lot of questions. And I was fortunate to be able to go and answer a lot of those questions and kind of learn a lot while we were there. We had quite a few days to figure it out, and it seems like we did figure it out. It took us a little bit, but they're not mule deer in Nevada. There's little things that are different that us treating them like mule deer wasn't working in the beginning. So
yeah,
looking in the wrong spots to anything and everything we were.
Let me ask you this: when did New Zealand first hit your radar? Because you're 45 now.
Yep.
When did it hit your radar, and when did it pique your interest?
Honestly, man, I've been following Remy for a long time, and Remy's been going down there into New Zealand for years. I don't know how many years now. What, 10 some odd years? It's a long time. He's put in a lot of days down there, and ever since I saw some of the episodes with him highlighting the country, seeing some of the things that he's seen down there, and some of the animals. Those mountains, those Southern Alps they're incredible. So it's hard not to want to go see those, just to even just go hike them. Mm-hmm. But I think Remy is the guy that kind of started the whole craze for me. It's been a lot of years. I don't know how many exactly, but that I've just always wanted an opportunity to go down there. And those tahr, something about those tahr that really piqued my interest. There's all these other animals down there. Right. There's stag, there's chamois, there's everything. But the tahr kind of seems like the pinnacle. That one animal that's at the top of the mountain and the rocks, secluded, all the things that you kind of hope to go chase and challenge yourself with. So, yeah, it was the Himalayan tahr that had my interest for a lot of years.
I'd say the same is true for me. I think I came across the New Zealand stuff with Steven Rinella on Meat Eater.
Okay.
With Remy,
yeah.
And that because what I did is I watched Solo Hunter from way back when, and when I saw the international hunts come up for Himalayan tahr, I skipped those episodes because they're not relatable, they're not my thing, they're not elk, they're not mule deer, they're not. So I skipped them, and then I was watching Meat Eater, and I saw that first episode with Remy, with Steven Rinella, and they cross like a glacial stream, and it looked incredible, epic. So then I went and binged on all the international episodes that Remy ever did on Solo Hunter.
Right.
And that's kind of how it all hit my radar, and it was kind of all at once. It was like I went from really not thinking much of it to I got to do that someday.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that I think about it, quite honestly, I think my first interest in going to New Zealand was more for the fishing. Back when I was guiding in Alaska, we had some guides that would come from the North Island, the South Island, they would work in Alaska, and they would tell me, you got to get down there. We'd fly in with choppers to these little streams and sight fish these, these giants in these little creeks. Real technical fishing, crystal clear water, and so that it's just one of those things. That's like the ultimate challenge.
Yeah.
Small waters, crystal clear, spooky fish. And so, I looked for reasons back then to be able to go over and guide in New Zealand. Never happened. Met my wife, got married, had kids. But no, I think that was the first reason. I mean, New Zealand, it's just incredible. It's got the animals, the hunting, the fishing, the waterfowl. There's just so much to be had and so much to see down there. So.
Yeah. My daughter was watching some of the videos from the hunt that we'll be publishing here in a couple of days, and there's a lot of video of water because New Zealand actually is, I think it's the number one freshwater producing country in the world.
I heard you say that. Yeah, it's like has more fresh water than anywhere or something like that producing.
And you've
out
been
of those
there.
mountains. There's water everywhere, man. You look for it. It's not hard to find. You're running up creeks, across creeks, through creeks constantly. It's
Everywhere was water.
yeah, for sure.
Unreal. And she said she made a comment about the color, the look of it, and she's like, that is the prettiest water.
Yeah.
She said that looks, and this is funny. She's into anime and all that kind of stuff. She's like, that looks like a Japanese anime water creek, like drawn. It almost looks digitized.
Doesn't
and
look
fake.
real.
She's
Yeah.
like, it almost doesn't look real.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, some of the photos you see, I'm looking back at some of the photos that Luke took on our trip, and it just brings you back there. And while we were there, I mean, you're just looking out at these giant mountains, and it doesn't seem real.
Yeah. So let's walk people a little bit through the trip and kind of how that went down, and we'll talk about costs. I think that's something that most guys want to know about, logistics,
Right.
things like that, and kind of our plan going in. And right at the outset, I want to say thank you to a lot of folks that helped us out, and most of them know who you are. I mean, Remy Warren especially was incredibly helpful on this trip.
He was actually during the trip. He
During
helped us
as
out,
well, like a major pivotal.
we were struggling a little bit. Had
Yeah.
just a couple nuggets of advice from Remy, and it totally turned our trip around.
And I would say bringing trophies home and all of that, talking firsthand with Remy was
Yeah.
indispensable. I would say thanks to Zion Pilgrim. He was very helpful as well. Helped us find some places in the Southern Alps. Kind of helped us with helicopter logistics.
Right.
So that was great. And then
I got a lot of good information from my buddy down south of me, Brian Barney,
Yeah.
who had just been there with Remy. So
Right.
He learned a ton. He had a great time, and I picked his brain on especially the travel. The travel was one of those pieces that really had me sketched out. I don't do a ton of traveling, but just getting from here to there without all these weird issues.
Yeah.
He put my mind at ease with some of those important little tips. So,
And I think we're going to release a second podcast where we talk about travel specifically in more detail, tips, tricks on travel. That'll be lumped in with gear, because those two things, just gear and travel are kind of those are some intimidating factors.
absolutely.
So I think we'll get into the hunt now, talk about that, and then the costs as we go along. So we flew there. It's a long flight, but you get there. We were kind of shocked. We didn't know we were going to land where there was a hut.
We had no idea. I mean,
We had our tents with us. We were like, well, drop us here.
well, it's funny because we're looking on this map and we're like, where are people probably not going a lot? Really remote. Those are kind of the things that we brought up to the chopper guy.
Rugged, thick.
Yeah, like where?
Or not thick, but
No, we were just like bow huntable. Good numbers of tar, maybe really rough, steep country, and
we wanted an adventure.
So we get on this chopper and we're flying along in this really cool, tussock. There's yellow grass everywhere, and it's like really nice, stockable bow type terrain. And then all of a sudden we take a turn and we veer up this canyon. Now we're up in the snow. Now it's really rocky and it's really thick. Like we're all of a sudden in this completely different place. Like it's a different zone.
Yeah.
We're looking at each other, and I'm thinking, as soon as we headed up that canyon, I'm like, boy, I hope he doesn't drop us in this canyon, because this canyon sucks with a bow. It's going to suck. It's going to be really tough.
Right.
And there we go. We start dropping in.
There's like 2 feet of
Right
snow.
into a big old pile of snow in a creek bed.
Yeah.
So, it took my breath away for sure where we landed. And then you're just looking straight up, in these rocks and trying to figure out, well, this does not look like it looked that way where we just came from. Really good stockable, terrain. But this is kind of what we put as our list: remote, rugged, steep, nasty country, probably a place a whole lot of people don't get to. And it had all that for sure. And then he did say, you're going to find some tar up on the tops over here and blah, blah, blah. You've seen them there before. So at least we have that.
Yeah. So we land, we see that it's thick, and we end up trying to climb the only place we knew there was a pass, and the map said pass, which
it
looked like
there's like a little sign on the map that showed this is a swale or a saddle. And so we're like, well, that must be the spot we can get up and over. And
an
really,
entire mountain range. And by the way, I think it was like 2,500 feet above the cabin.
Yeah.
Was the pass.
Yeah. And really the only way to get up to anywhere even close to the ridge where it opens up, where you can actually see stuff, is to find a creek bed and climb it, crawl your way up it, just kind of go back and forth across it. Rock climb it, go through the creek, up and over little falls. It's the only way. Some of that jungle is just completely impenetrable. Like you just can't go through it, period.
And, we were dealing with weather, and one of the tips I'd say that really helped us out was you had the Garmin InReach, and you actually purchased the premium, the weather, the weather service.
Yeah.
So I think it's $1 per.
I don't know what it is. I've got like the full meal deal on my InReach, so I can text my wife unlimited messages and get
too.
that weather
Me too.
whenever I want it. So I don't have to actually text anybody anymore.
And the weather is thorough.
Yeah.
It was thorough.
Very good.
And so we would get the weather forecast in detail for the next few days, which then allowed us to strategize our plan. And what sucked is we were trying to find tar. I mean, of course, right off the bat. And we had difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah, we were struggling to just put eyes on a tar or put eyes on tracks in the snow. Initially we kind of just looked up and tried to get our eyes above the thickness of that jungle that we were in. So we kind of went across canyon, looking back at the upper end of where we were, but we just weren't putting any tracks.
No,
in
and
our glass.
we looked, because later we actually found tar. We did not see tar up there. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't think we just missed them. I just think they weren't.
So there had been 2 feet of snow dump just prior to us getting there. And I think it had them hunkered down a little bit, which is why we just weren't seeing tracks. So when you're not seeing tracks up that high, like my mule deer brain thinks, well, you got to look lower. Right? They've moved down a little bit. And
because those tracks are a telltale sign.
It just tells you they're not there when you're not seeing them.
If they had been there, their sign was covered by that fresh snow.
But I think that snowfall was so fresh, it had just come down, and they just hadn't gotten to move around enough to where we were putting eyes on them. So our mistake was, with some glassing, not seeing anything. We're like, well, we got to get down. We got to go down. And a lot of people had said that time of year they're going to be looking for nannies, so they're going to be going down.
Yeah, because
to find the nannies.
The nannies and the kids want to feed on the grass and the nice stuff, and when it's covered in 2 feet of snow, they got to come off those tops to feed, and they'll maybe go back up. But during the feeding in the morning, especially, they'll be down low, and so the whole theory was find the nannies, and then you'll find the big bulls.
Right. Well, we couldn't even find nannies.
Well,
we went down. The problem was that when we went down in elevation, it was really thick. Like we weren't in an area where if you drop down, you're just looking at, these nice grass mountains.
Right.
We were up in it where it was rock to jungle.
Yeah.
And once that snow started to melt away a little bit, all of a sudden, that tussock started giving way, and you could see it at the bottom end of that rock.
Yep.
And I think that's when, after a couple of messages and everything on where we should be putting our eyeballs, we kind of figured out.
After phoning a friend with the InReach,
one of the best guys to phone too.
Yeah. Could he solo hunt sometimes?
Yeah, he's done some solo hunting. He gave me just a couple of key little nuggets.
Yeah.
Head of basins,
Yeah.
top of the mountain, in the rocks, and that was all it took. So,
And we were like up there where it's like forever frozen snow, like up there where the abominable snowman
yeah,
is.
where we're seeing no tracks. How can that be?
Yeah.
But we put in some time, and then it's like, oh, they are up there. We found them.
Yeah.
Um,
But that took us 3 days.
few days. Yeah.
3 days. We were 3 days in, I guess 2.5, when we finally put eyes on our first tar.
But fortunately, we did go down canyon a little bit, and we found some other critters.
Which I'm
in
glad.
the process.
I'm so glad we did, because when we glassed all that snow, and by the way, watching the film, there's significant
Mhm.
snow melt between the first day we got there and a few days
Oh, yeah.
later when we glassed up the tar. All that grass that was covered, it was covered in snow, and then it had melted and you could see grass.
Right.
So I think, again, that fresh snow just kind of threw us off a bit. But yeah, we went down canyon and came on a group of chamois, a mob of chamois. And
Is that what they call them?
yeah, mob.
Mob. Mob of 5.
And you spotted them at like almost 600 yards, like 550. We were about 480 at when we sat down to glass them for a while,
Yeah, really pick it apart.
and they were onto us back there at 550.
Unbelievable how weary they were. I mean, they picked us off. We were completely across that riverbed
With a good
in
brush
some
backdrop.
brush.
Yeah.
and we're looking totally across this canyon, and they're just like, they're looking over at us way across there, and they're just these little specks over there, So yeah, at first I didn't believe it, but sure enough, they were dead locked.
And
in.
I kind of knew a little bit about chamois, and I had heard such things, but they do see. That's one of their greatest strengths, is they can see about. They're known to pick off movement at 800 yards. So they've
Right.
got bionic vision, and they're
I believe it.
they're classified as like a goat antelope
Right,
or an antelope goat.
real similar to an antelope.
So
Like a
they
mountain antelope.
they share some weird antelope characteristics. Technically, they're still a goat, but of a type. Their evolution's pretty fascinating as you dig into it. But basically, though, what was interesting is they're shorter than a mature Coues deer, but they're heavier.
Heavier.
They
Really?
weigh a lot more than a mature mule deer.
What are they saying? They're about 65 to 115 pounds for a mature chamois? Is that what you got?
130.
130 pounds.
But here's the thing. In Europe, where chamois are from, because they're introduced to New Zealand, so we should state that New Zealand's unique because it evolved in isolation. Because then a lot of islands do. That's why islands have unique animals on them that aren't endemic to the rest of the world, because they have evolved in isolation. They didn't co-evolve with anything else. They're left on this little island, so what you have there is a really unique set of species that are nowhere else. That's why Australia and some other places, they have some just unique animals.
Yeah.
And so the only mammal that is native to New Zealand is a bat. All the other mammals there now are introduced and, non-native, or you could say invasive.
Yeah.
And chamois are among them, and they were introduced in, I want to say the late 1800s, something like that, maybe 1920s. They came from Austria, as I understand it, but they grow in their native land about 20% larger than they grow in New Zealand.
Gotcha.
They still live for a long time, but I guess New Zealand is missing, because they didn't grow and evolve there. It is missing some nutrition and some stuff. They can't, I guess, leverage the grass the same way. They don't thrive on it as well. But tahr seem to thrive on tussocks. They seem to.
Yeah.
They're there are goat species that truly can eat anything and get energy out of it.
Yeah, and much heavier than a chamois.
Yeah.
Much heavier.
So there's your chamois history. There's
Yeah.
chamois.
I was shocked, again, being so inexperienced and not knowing anything about a lot of these animals. I didn't know chamois were that small. When we got up on that thing, we're like, huh. I was looking at it through a scope, and I just assumed it was this big, but really it was this big. It was very, very short.
That's what hunting coos deer does to you.
Mm.
You see a coos deer and it's in a desert in an environment I'm not familiar with. I see it next to a barrel cactus. I assume that barrel cactus is 6 feet tall, looking at it at 200 yards. You get over there and it's like 3 feet tall, and the deer had to stand on its toes to eat
the top of it.
Top of it.
Yeah.
And so when you shoot, it's like shooting a coos deer, and then you walk up on it and you're like, whoa, like how did I hit this target? It's like
Right.
a big jackrabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how that chamois was. I mean, I could just basically pick it up and bring it down to you guys.
Yeah.
And, there it is.
Typically, it looks like, 55 pounds. A female can weigh 55 to, I think, 80 or something. Actually, they're quite big, stocky, muscular. And it makes sense because they're a mountain animal.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, goats, chamois, or in the chamois, they got to have muscles that coos deer don't.
Right.
So even though coos deer are taller, they're not heavier.
Yeah.
They don't have the bone structure. They don't have the muscle.
If you get to watch those chamois, which we were able to bounce around through those rocks. I mean, once we got up into those rocks, we weren't bouncing around in those rocks, man. It was a struggle to go anywhere. It was so steep, and they're just like playing around up there.
Yeah.
And that's just their backyard, and just like a goat, in that type terrain. And yeah, so they definitely develop a heck of a lot more muscle than a coos deer out in the desert.
Yeah. So you took one with the rifle. It was pretty cool. If you want to see it, you can go watch the video go to briancall.com, go to the YouTube videos there. And, but yeah.
Watch my hat fly off my head.
Right. It was so steep. It was like,
it was like the only shot I had,
man,
but the angle of looking straight up like that. And then,
it was a sweet moment because it was a tough gig, man.
Mm-hmm.
And to pull it off was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was super good. And we at that point, I was pretty stoked to be able to just go eat some meat that night.
Yeah.
And put that on the stove and get a taste of it.
And we were able to slice it real thin and find out that is the way to eat it.
The first go around, I cut it a little thick. It was
Yeah.
a little chewy.
Ate it a little raw, tried it that way, tried it a little cooked, different ways.
And then just went super, super thin. Little bit of spice to it. And man, that was like
Melted.
just barely cooked.
Yeah.
Flip, and eat it that way. That was the best. Just melt in your mouth.
When you cut it real thin, I didn't have high hopes for it.
No.
And it turned out phenomenal. So next time, folks, if you're out there eating chamois, you're wondering how to best prepare it, man, that was the way to do it. Super thin. It kind of reminds me of like a Japanese like sukiyaki. Just thin beef. You throw it on like a fry, on each side, a little seasoning, and you like eat it. It's like just thin cut meat.
Yeah, it's just a few seconds on each side cooked, and a little bit of rawness to the middle. I mean, it's just perfect.
It was really good. Good tasting meat. And then, what did you think about the hide and the animal itself, putting hands on it?
So, yeah, the hide was ridiculously cool. I mean, again, not knowing anything about them, finally you get to get up on that animal and just see how beautiful that hide is. And I noticed that ridge of hair that goes right down their back. That was pretty unique. And it's just a really thick, for such a small critter, really, really thick hide. So of course, we stripped that off, and I have that back here. We ended up bringing it back, and you somehow have gotten me turned on to this hide thing.
Sorry.
And now
it's cool though.
Now I'm making all these hides, tanning all these hides, chamois hide, tar hides, and bear rugs. And
I never would have thought much of a chamois hide. It's short. It looks kind of basic. You know, you look at the flowing hair on a tar and you're like,
yeah.
dude, wow. You look at a chamois and it's like, oh, that's cool. But putting hands on it,
When you put your hands on it, you're like, wow, I would love to have this in my house. And so, no, and it's just surprising how thick the actual hide itself is versus the hair. Super cool. No, I was really glad we ended up pulling that hide off along with the meat. So,
yeah. And the thing about chamois leather is another interesting fact. Chamois leather is, in fact, where the term chamois comes from, chamois cloth.
Chamois cloth, yeah.
And basically, chamois leather has a lot of uses, but it's such a fine, smooth leather. You can use it to. That's why people use it to clean their car, to wash the paint on the car, to wash a lens,
Right.
on a camera, because it's such a fine. It will not scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And they also used it as gas filter because, like, once you've saturated that leather in gasoline, and let's say you put it over a pipe and you're pouring gas into it, it won't allow water to pass through. So it's like a fuel filter in the old days where they would use it to, remove the water from the gasoline,
Right.
or keep water from entering the gasoline.
Right. Right. Huh.
Now they have, other types of synthetic filters for that, but still back in the day,
Used
that's
to be
how
a chamois
it was
cloth.
done.
Wow.
So it had a few other uses too. So it's a very special kind of. It's real supple. It's a cool hide, man.
Yeah, I'm almost more excited to get the chamois back than the tar.
Yeah.
Even though the tar is really cool with the long hair, but that chamois is going to be special.
Well, and it is thick and plush. Like
Yeah.
when you touch it, it's super plush.
Yeah.
A lot more than I thought it was. But then it makes sense because
And
look
you know
where
what?
they're living.
You know what I really like about the chamois hide is it didn't stink like nasty goat.
Yeah, right. There is that. I thought you were going to say,
There
you know
wasn't.
what I really like about a chamois hide is I got one and you don't.
I could have said that.
Sucker. Just means I got to go back,
That's right.
So, folks, spoiler alert, I did not get a chamois.
Close.
So
close.
We did, if we had 2 rifles on that trip, we could have.
Yeah. And, thinking this thing through that time of year, we were warned, like, hey, you may hit some really bad weather. You want to extend that trip as long as you can because you may have a week out on weather that time of year. We were very fortunate with the weather. For the most part, we had great weather. But you could definitely see where opportunities would be very slim.
Yeah.
Like your days of actually getting out and hunting and having the time to put in on stalking and all that could be pretty short with fog. Nasty, windy,
We
rainy
got into
conditions,
some
so-
fog where we couldn't see. In fact, I shot a tar,
Oh yeah, we
and then Ryan had a tar like step up, and then the fog came in and disappeared
Yeah.
for a good. And we were sitting there going, "Come on, fog!"
we were waiting
we
for
needed
that fog
to
just
lift.
to clear out a little bit. So,
Yeah. So
no.
that, anyway, yeah. And so we picked our drop camp. We really wanted to hit 2 different types of hunt while we were there. One where we did a drop camp, and then one where we did a do-it-yourself kind of, rather
Just
than
a
the
hike
DIY
in.
drop camp, just a hike in. Like you drive to a spot, get out and walk in.
Yeah.
Just like a day hunt area. And so we split the trip up to try to do it that way. I think the whole trip was 14 days, somewhere in there.
Yep.
And so 8 or 9 days was in the drop camp with the helicopter in Mordor, and then the other one was more in some tamer country. But
Yeah. And quite honestly, the walk-in area that we ended up in at the end of the trip, that was bow country. I mean, and there's a lot of tar. That was some fun stuff.
we belly crawled into tar. We only hunted there 2 days,
Yeah.
day and a half, and there were ample bow hunting opportunities.
Quickly realized we were in the wrong spot for bows in the beginning because this place was it was made for it. You could get down in that grass and get underneath the grass and just get right in on those tar, no problem. It was pretty cool.
So we'll get into that. We basically, when we're in the hut after you shot your chamois, we spotted those chamois again and tried to get after them, but didn't work out. We were we ended up taking the advice of Remy and everyone else and heading back up canyon and getting up into the high elevation areas.
Yep.
And
getting to the head of that basin and basically
and then you spotted it.
Keep looking higher.
You spotted a tar, and when you spotted the tar, my heart sank.
It's like, oh, that's where they're at.
I mean,
way up there.
Was it not daunting?
Yeah. I mean, you're like, is that even possible to get to? I don't know if it is. And then
it looked like something out of the Himalayas that you'd imagine, like in giant snowdrifts and wind and like slopes that'll kill you, cliffs. I mean, it looked really intimidating.
Immediately you start thinking, did we bring the right gear to get up there?
And the answer, no, we did not.
We did not have the right gear. We were naive, I guess. Another thing that we learned on this trip was what to bring, and don't skimp on some of that mountain climbing gear that you just don't want to pack. So for sure, it would have helped.
So we spot these tar, we watch them for quite a while, and then we decide to go after one. We put a game plan together. We get in position, and it takes us, I mean, it's a gnarly climb. Just getting to where we could take the tar, and you did. You made a great shot. Just getting to that spot was butt puckering.
Yeah.
On a number of...
Oh, yeah.
And the camera just doesn't do it justice.
No.
Usually when you're on the verge of dying, the camera's not coming out. Like, it comes out later in different spots, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. I was talking to my wife the other day, looking through some of the footage, like it just doesn't show the steepness. It's steeper than it looks on the camera. And that one was, you're just like the creek beds, you're going for rock fields or anything to get around the brush. The brush was, again, impenetrable in a lot of ways. So finding rock fields or dirt little patches, av shoots where you could actually scurry up to where the tar were, you're puckered a lot because it's so steep, and the threat of slipping or a boulder coming off from the guy in front of you coming down, all those different things. No, it was definitely a challenge, and there was no easy way to get up there any which way.
But we were super stoked about seeing a tar. Yep. Seeing a lot of tar, actually. We glassed a bunch up there.
Yeah.
And then we crept into range, and you took a tar. And it was one thing getting to where we could take the shot. But then it came down to recovering the tar. And that proved to be the hardest part on every hunt.
Every time.
Was recovering the tar.
Because, eventually we started realizing, we got to be very careful where we shoot these things. Like, you got to be able to recover them. We never didn't get one, but it was tough to recover every single one of them. A lot of those places, like that first one, we shot it, and where it went down, it doesn't look that far away. But then getting to what doesn't look that far away and getting there, it took us, how long do you think it took us just to get to where we saw that thing go down that canyon? It took us forever.
3 hours?
Yeah.
2.5, 3
hours.
And it wasn't that far, because it
wasn't.
It was like a 200-yard shot or something.
Yeah. But it took us forever. And just those little humps, trying to pull ourselves up with the grasses, using the grasses as leverage.
And honestly, we were in a hurry because we really didn't want to come down in the dark.
Right.
Because that's really scary.
Yeah.
Didn't work. We came down in the dark.
We came right down in the middle of the night, as usual.
Dude, with Ryan, it's always a night hike. So we got back up there, and I got to admit, when Ryan spotted him and I saw where he had landed, my stomach fell out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because he fell in a chute covered in snow, and it was an avalanche chute, basically. And I'm just glad he stopped where he did. But at the bottom of that chute, because I wanted to know if there was a way out the bottom, it's like an 800-foot drop straight down.
Yeah.
So if you slide and you can't arrest yourself, you can't stop yourself from continuing, you're dead.
Yeah.
You're going to fall off that thing. And it's really eerie being in snow on such a steep slope where it's freezing and
there's grass
melting and there's
grass underneath.
Yeah.
Yep.
And all it takes is a slip, momentum, and you're not stopping.
Right. That was the worry. 90% of that whole first trip was slipping and not being able to stop yourself, because we didn't have ice axes like we should have. We had poles, and we used those to their limit, to keep us from slipping off the hill. So
yep, we really did need an ice axe, because that actually can arrest a slide.
Right.
Poles are not going to arrest a slide.
They're good for digging in and not slipping initially. But
and
once
we had micro spikes, which really helped.
Yeah,
but we're not crampons.
We needed full crampons for that to be a little bit safer, for sure.
Yeah, you need a ice axe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely some gear that we should have brought. And that was a complete learning experience. Now we know. I would definitely not go back there without ropes, ice axes for everybody, and full crampons. The micro spikes were awesome in some of the basins, creek crossings, all that kind of thing, where crampons would not have been great. But those micro spikes just didn't cut it in that deep snow, especially where there was grass underneath. It would have been great to have full crampons. And, honestly, I thought about bringing them, but just not knowing what to expect over there, I assumed we would be not in that type of terrain. I assumed we'd be more in the grassy type areas,
right?
Stocking them. But I'm glad we ended up where we did. But man, it was a pucker fest a lot of the time, just trying to stay feet solid, not taking a slide.
Recently Green Tree had that SOS and rescue that happened. Having been there personally and seen the country and done it, and I've spoken to a lot of New Zealanders since then. They're dangerous.
Yeah,
those mountains in New Zealand are dangerous. They pose a real threat, and there's a lot of guys that just haven't spent much time mountaineering or in the mountains. And as much as I have, it's not in the snow. It's not on those kinds of cliffed out drops.
No, that is, I've had a bunch of questions too, especially after the Green Tree thing. People saying, would you go in there solo? Or do you think you should absolutely 100% take a partner? And quite honestly, I love solo hunting. I do it. I love it. There's a thrill in it. There's a challenge to it. And I would definitely hunt certain places in New Zealand solo. There's a lot of places you can. Where we were, I definitely wouldn't advise it. You could get hurt in a hurry. And one slip, one broken bone, an in-reach not getting out, stuff like that, it could pose a real problem real fast. And I got a heck of a lot more respect for that country now after being there. I don't think I'd find myself solo up there after seeing what we saw.
I think I would certainly hunt the walk-in area.
Oh, for sure.
We did solo, no problem.
No problem at all.
Totally different. So there's plenty of options to go solo.
Yeah.
Where we went, it's really a mountaineering kind of place. It's almost like, having a rope. You got
to have some experience in the mountains to be able to hunt that, for sure. Picking routes, doing things, trying to not be stupid and make a mistake or take a fall or take a slip, bad step is all it takes, and you're done.
There was one day where there must have been at least 6-7 avalanches.
Yeah.
On the...
oh, yeah, you just hear them just erupt across the canyon.
Sounds like thunder.
And just snow rolling down those rock fields.
And then you just see this cloud of snow.
Yeah.
And that was all day long.
In the rocks in the snow.
Right. We were on the north-facing slope, which was good.
Yeah.
But it was, and most of those avalanches were we're in the sun.
Get in the sun.
But still, it was on our mind the whole time.
Yeah. One thing we learned, those soft-sided spots were not places you wanted to be. First off, that's where it's a real wet snow, and you could take a slip. That's where obviously the avalanche chutes are going to go, or the avalanches are going to go. But those north sides was a challenge in just getting your toe picks in places. And that's the other problem, is when it was in the morning after a hard frozen night, getting to where you could actually get across these little fields and not just slide off the top, because it was pretty rough to get any kind of a toe pick in there.
Yeah.
Even get your pole anywhere near bottomed out. So
So we get in there, we get your first tar. We come off the mountain in the dark, which was Pucker Fest.
Yeah, that was fun, wasn't it? Coming out those first couple 100 yards off the top after we had it loaded in the pack, that was rough, man, because it was a wet snow.
And if you slipped, you would fall 400 feet, 200 feet on some spots. Like, there was some serious death. We got to a point where we joked about how this part probably wouldn't kill us anymore. We were below, but we'd be in the crippling.
Yeah, we'd get mangled, but not dead.
Not dead.
But yeah. And the one thing that I thought was like remarkable was the grass and how tough it is. I swear, that grass, you could take like 3 or 4 strands and it would carry your body weight.
Oh, yeah.
So you're constantly grabbing brush or grass or whatever, hoping you don't grab the spiky stuff. But that stuff saved us.
And that grass is called tussock.
Yeah.
And that tussock it grows in clumps, or bunch grass or clump grass, And so it's got a root ball. It grows in a bunch. And what I learned about that is, it's not like your typical grass, like the grass here in this park that forms a bed and continues on. Like, each clump is independent. And it actually generates more water than, for some reason, it's a type of grass that doesn't consume tons of water, but does something to produce tons of water, which is really interesting, which again kind of goes in hand with New Zealand's ability to produce water. But some of those biggest clumps that we saw are called snowgrass, and those live for centuries. Some of those snowgrass clumps are estimated to be centuries old.
Wow.
So when you grab onto one of those,
they're tough. But not fun to walk around or walk through, because
some of them are sharp, like
as unstable as you could possibly get, because there's clumps everywhere.
Yeah.
So every step is, maybe you're going to go through.
Yeah, maybe you're going to fall through a 4-foot
waist deep
hole.
Yeah. And then sometimes at the bottom of that, there's a cluster of sharp grass or whatever they call that, real sharp stuff, constantly getting pricked by stuff down there. So,
but it was pretty sweet. We get back down there that day, and we got our first tar.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. That was awesome.
That was a good feeling, getting it down and then getting off that hill that night. That was a long night.
And through the course of staying in a couple different huts, they have these journals in the huts. And each of those journals has a log of activity. Like, hunters actually go in and fill out the journal entries. Saw this many tar, saw them right here.
Yeah.
Shot this many, recovered, shot 7, recovered 2, like stuff like that.
There was a lot of that, wasn't there? I mean,
there was
really interesting going through them, because they have their names, they have where they're from, and then what they saw. And it went back for years, these journals, because not a whole lot of people go there to these huts. But it seems like, there was a few entries prior to us being there, and a lot of the stories in the journals were the same. It's like the tar were way high or too high, couldn't reach the tar, way above.
There was that consistent theme.
Oh,
they're at
man.
the top
of the mountain, couldn't get to them, or there was, unfortunately, shockingly, a lot of shot 2 recovered 0 or shot 5 recovered 2, or there was a lot of that. The recovery,
which is
I don't know what the recovery rate is, but it didn't seem great.
No, and I noticed, we also ran into some Kiwis in a couple of spots we hunted later where they didn't bring the meat home. Yeah. They didn't bring the meat really at all. or they brought up a little portion of the meat. And that is a little different there than it is here. I mean, a lot different. Like here, all the designated game animals that you have to have, first you have to have a license and a tag to harvest. There, you don't need a license or a tag. It's all free game. And then there's no wanton waste laws.
Waste, yeah. No, you don't have to take anything off the mountain, which is just, it blows my mind. And, it's just a different world over there. It's just different process, different management practices. I mean, could you imagine though, leaving that tar up there after eating it?
No, in fact, tar meat is so good. It's pretty ridiculous. Especially because they smell like worse than a.
I didn't have high hopes when we were cleaning them and skinning them out and breaking
all the
meat
jizz
off.
and the fur and the nastiness and the musk.
I just kept thinking, like, growing up, it was like a goat, like an old billy goat, male billy goat
in a barn,
stanking it up. Like, you smell that from a mile away. That's what these things smelled like. Just nasty. But you get the meat off. You get the hide away from the meat because the hide is what's really bad and potent. And then you get the meat off to itself, clean it up. It is ridiculously good. Just a real mild, easy to eat meat. It's just
that was surprising.
Yeah,
that was real surprising. In fact, it's kind of a pinkish, whitish meat, and it's really good.
We've been burgering the heck out of it. I froze a lot of it in just clusters, and then we fresh grind it.
It's us too. That's what we did. It's my wife and kids. Their favorite meat right now is tar burgers, and I gotta admit, I mean, they are pretty. They're pretty. They taste great. Really mild. I think one of the reasons my wife likes it is because it's like chicken. Which I joke that chicken's flavorless.
It's the most flavor.
It's whatever you season it to, which is right up my wife's alley. Right. Oh, sweet. This is so good. It tastes like nothing.
Yeah.
But it is good. It has it's got a real mild flavor.
Yeah, opposed to what I thought was going to be a real strong, gamey flavor. It didn't have that at all.
So that was good. And then so we end up going up to the top of one of the mountains, the mountain behind the bivvy, really.
Yeah, after we took that first tar, it was at that point we kind of realized, all right, there's more up here. We saw another really good tar that night.
The logbook really kind of told us a lot.
Yeah, up to the top. And so we got that tar off the hill, and we realized, well, maybe a better approach would be to get up to this ridge, up this creek bed, and get up there where we had kind of left just a beautiful blonde tar from that night that we shot my first one. And so that was the game plan. So we just started scaling a creek bed and got up to that ridge, and that was rough. That was not fun. That was dicey.
That last 150 yards again, was a situation where we probably shouldn't have done it.
No. And as you're doing it, you're thinking it's always easier going up. It's really, really, really tough coming back down because you're literally using all fours, your legs, everything to kind of keep a grip on the rock to get up and over some of these ledges to get above it and then get to the top.
And you're picking a route and you're like, well, I've got this 15-foot cliff that's got pretty good handholds. I got a pack on because I got my camp and everything. It's got a slight incline. It's not quite a cliff, but it might as well be. And if I fall, I'm probably going to be crippled. But
you're going to break something and skin yourself.
But I probably won't die. Yeah. And so you're like, I'm so close, and then it's got to be flat. The rest. And you get to that point, and then you sail for a while, a little bit. It's still steep and sketchy, and then you're like, you're cliff. Then you hit that other cliff, and you're like, crap. Well, it's just one more. And before you know it, you've done 7 of those, and you're like, there's no way I can pick my way back down without this was dangerous enough. I should have stopped at the first cliff, but I didn't. And I could see how you can get yourself into a really bad situation real quick.
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know just that climb alone that day. I mean, just thinking about the thought of coming back down, there was no way I was going to come back down that. It was like we were going down the other side, no matter what. It's the only way we're
Down
gonna
the
get out.
canyon on the
Down
other
the
side.
other side, down that draw.
Yeah, and when we were going up it, that's the same thing. When I got toward the top, I'm like, there's no way we're going back.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna risk it. My it's too dangerous. We've got a chopper coming, and I'm like, Ryan, text the guy and find out through the inReach. Tell him we need to be picked up over here because it's too dangerous for us to try to go back.
right. Yeah,
And I didn't like doing that, but at the same time, I think it was
it was a smart move.
a smart move, and that was a foolish thing. But like I said, I can see how it's easy to get yourself in that situation if you're not really.
Yeah, when you're gung ho and you're just wanting to get up there, and we knew there was tar up there, but again, there's a lot of things we learned on this trip. Things I would do, things I wouldn't do.
And I'll tell you this: I wouldn't think twice. I would not think twice about any one of those 10, 15-foot cliff faces on any given day if all I fell was 15 or 20 feet. Like, It's so easy to scramble up that stuff. I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't do it where you could fall 300 feet.
Mm-hmm.
That is a different. We talked about that walking a knife edge. It's like there's lots of ledges I would walk in a heartbeat if it was 20 feet down. Like it's 2 feet wide. I'm not going to fall. Like I'm agile. Like I got this.
Yeah, but when you're walking and it's foggy and you can't even see the bottom, and it's an edge that you're not going to stop ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's different. It's super sketchy. I don't even know how many times we threw around the word puckered because there's a lot of that. Brought my daughters up a few times, and that's never a good sign. It's like, should I really be doing this? But in saying all that, we were extremely careful as well. We didn't just haphazardly climb things, and
every step we're very cautious on.
Mhm.
Every step. Like I said, it would be a situation where I'd normally just skate across it.
Yeah.
And instead I was taking, every step was taking me
Yeah.
a long time.
When you don't know your fall line, and up there you just don't, because there's cliffs everywhere. So there's little, snow chutes that you can see down there a little ways, but then you can't see beyond that. And it's so easy to get cliffed out up there. Side hilling up and down constantly. I don't even know how many times we got cliffed out.
Yeah, there's this quote. It's by Edward Whymper, and he's a mountaineer from back in the day when they just tied a rope to each other, and climbed Everest and stuff. And back in the 1900s, and he says, "Climb if you will, but remember that courage and strength are not or nothing without prudence, and that a momentary negligence may destroy the happiness of a lifetime. Do nothing in haste. Look well to each step, and from the beginning think what may be the end."
Yeah.
Which pretty much was every step.
Every step.
I could not go home to my daughters.
Yeah. And you saw how slow I went through all that stuff. Like, I usually hike pretty fast when there's not that.
Right.
But I was like a sloth in that snow. It was just every single one, because just thinking things through, it's like any one of these could be it if I just go through it and don't think. And I don't have, all four, sunk into this snow. Easily you could get yourself, messed up in a hurry. So, no, going really, really slow. In fact, we actually had somebody glass us up at a certain point. What did they say?
The dudes from Norway.
Yeah. They saw us up on the top.
Like 2 miles away.
Yeah.
They spotted us with their fancy European optics from one of the huts. And we know this because Luke was with them, because we ditched Luke because he hurt his knee. Yep. And Luke was our camera guy throughout most of the trip. I mean, I'd say we ended up being our own camera guy on certain parts of it. But so Luke was back at the hut way far away.
Miles away.
And the guys from Norway, they're like, hey, we see your friends, and Luke's like, you do? And they're like, yeah, see that mountaintop way over there? And literally the highest peak with the most snow on it at the very top. That's where we were. And they're like, they're right there. And then they go, and they're looking through the spotter, and they turn to Luke and they go, and they look very, very scared.
Oh, that's right.
And we were, dude.
I'm sure we did, because we were moving like snails, man. We were going so slow. Every footstep was like
digging a hole
calculated.
with each step in the spikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was at one point where we got.
I wouldn't say scared. I'd say smart.
Cautious. Yeah. Prudent.
Yeah.
There was one point where, when I've done a fair bit of rock climbing when I was younger, just used to climb all the time, and I fell a lot, and you'd have the rope, and I'd lead climb or I'd top rope. But I can remember a few times where the adrenaline got the best of me, because you're at a certain point, you're like, I'm going to fall. And then the adrenaline kicks in, and then you're smoked.
Yeah. Yep.
And there was a couple of times where we got onto some areas where we're walking a ledge, and I'm like, I got to sit down and I got to eat some sugar and some food, because smoke. The adrenaline just
you're tensed up.
Crushed me.
A few minutes, you're tensed up that tight. It gets you.
And I've done things enough to know, well, it's better off for me to just sit down, recoup, eat, replenish some of that sugar and stuff, and then get back on your feet. But yeah, it was a gnarly situation, but we did it. We got up there, and this was a really cool experience, because we ended up pitching the Cimarron, the Seek Outside Cimarron, on the top of this ridge line.
About the only somewhat flat spot for a long, long ways.
And that brings up a good point. A lot of people have asked about that Cimarron, and it's unreal because it's Dyneema Cuben fiber. It's 1.5 pounds.
Yeah, it's ridiculously light, and it's got a ton of space in there.
It's crazy.
And stove capable if you want.
Yep.
So yeah, you just can't beat the weight from the space you have.
The footprint was 9.5 by 8.5 or something like that. It's big, but it's not so big because I've used another one that's 14 by 8. And finding a spot, we could just barely fit that 8.5, 9.5 footprint down, but it worked great for us. We both we pitched that thing. And we were dealing with a lot of fog and rain. In the forecast, we knew it. But we had a little weather window to climb the mountain, knowing that the next day it was going to be nasty. And then sure enough, it was. But we were in a shelter, so we could just wait it out. But we were right in the TAR's lap.
Yep. Parked right on our ridge. We knew they weren't that far away. We just needed some windows to be able to glass them up. And every once in a while, we would get a window, but it was going to be a short-lived window. So we kind of stayed hunkered down, waiting for basically a time where we could actually get out and get a stock on a TAR. Even though any which direction from where we were camped looked treacherous.
I tell you what, though, it was really cool glassing with the binos and the spotters right out the door of the teepee.
Oh, yeah.
While the weather was nasty, we were in sleeping bags watching TAR.
And it was like every time just like a 30-second window came across where we could see something, we could put the spotter out and pick up a TAR. Whether that was a TAR that we could even think about getting to, a lot of them, not the case, but we definitely picked some out. And that was actually the first spot where we ended up having those Kias.
Oh, yeah.
Like all over the place.
They first landed up there where you shot your first TAR.
Yeah.
Making noise, but they really got close to us. Yeah, on that other one. I like that setup. We started seeing TAR all over in the snow, and we could see TAR coming off that bluff, that big main cliff. Basically, we got to just watch TAR for a day.
Yeah. No, it was fun. And we, I remember one specific tar. We didn't know if we could ever get to it, even if there wasn't any fog or anything. It was just way up there. And it was a good bull with a bunch of nannies. But no, that was fun. Just kind of hunkered down and waiting out that weather and the fog mostly. But the Cimarron in that spot was about like the perfect size, perfect everything that we could have had.
And, I had a few people write in and ask about it. The condensation,
Mm-hmm.
you get that in certain places. Some people talked about how they own one or a Seek, but I don't know if it was the Cuban fiber one or not. But and this is with any single wall shelter, you can end up with condensation and then getting damp inside and things like that. And we didn't really run into that too bad.
No, I mean there was two of us. The Cimarron's pretty good size. With two guys and all our gear, we still got ample space in there.
Yeah.
So we're not even close to the walls. We're not having to,
We-
kind of brush up against them or anything like that.
And we didn't bring the stove because there's no wood. We were above timberline, way at the top in the rocks.
Yeah.
So we didn't bring it with us, knowing where we were going to camp. And the thing is, later we went into an area and we knew there was going to be no wood, but we brought one of those pressed logs, and it was worth it. And Cole Kramer did that in Kodiak. I kind of wished when we were on the top of that ridge that we had brought just a compressed log and a stove.
It would have been nice. Yeah, for sure.
And
now those little compressed things, I mean, they are super handy up there where you obviously can't get wood or dry wood. Dry wood is really tough, even down below. But
I think it would be totally worth it to bring a pressed log with you. For they're heavy, but you burn it, you're not packing it out.
Right. No, well worth it. I mean, our packs are generally pretty light. We were going out on a few-day excursions, so you're not loaded down with food
Easily.
or water. We got water everywhere.
And for the comfort and to dry out, and I mean, some people asked about logs, what logs we used. The ones we got in New Zealand weren't the best. I've used better here in the States. Cole used, I want to say, like coffee grounds. He tested those out. And then I forget the name of the ones that he was using. Do you know?
I don't.
He had to cut them with a table saw so that they would fit in the stove. And that sort of defeats the purpose, because when they're compressed and they stay compressed, they burn longer.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you cut them up, they burn faster just because there's more surface area to burn there. But that would have been nice. We didn't have it though. But it was all right. We were dry.
Yep.
And then we got after a couple tar and we killed some tar. And I kind of want people to watch the video to get the details. But basically,
it's hard to describe the place until you got to see it in video, or at least some photos or any of that. I think the video is going to be pretty cool to relive, going back and watching that.
But recovering Ryan's tar, which is a nice bull for us. I mean, that was one thing that came up. Somebody wrote in from New Zealand, the New Zealand dude, and really hated on our trip, and mocked us for shooting some younger bulls,
for not killing giant.
And,
which I mean, my opinion is that's ridiculous. First off, there's always a process for any kind of hunting. I didn't start hunting the States killing giants. It's just like we went over there with the purpose of learning, figuring it out, having an adventure. It wasn't to just kill the oldest bull on the mountain. Maybe that'll be a couple trips down the line or next year or whatever, but not ever laying hands on a tar. I wanted to lay hands on a tar. I wanted to get a really cool hide and get some of that meat. It really wasn't about finding a 13-inch trophy bull at all. I was tickled just to get some of those what you call younger bulls. I don't know what 4 or 5 year old bulls.
Mm-hmm.
No, the whole trophy thing was just not a part of this initial trip at all whatsoever.
But it left a real bad taste in my mouth that hunters disparage another guy's hunt. When I shot my tar, I didn't care how big it was.
No,
I didn't care. I wanted a tar. I wanted to experience that harvest out there. I wanted to take the meat. I wanted a coat. I wanted just the whole experience. And
it was an adventure.
It was adventure
and
experience oriented.
We got experience. We learned a ton for future hunts, and that's kind of what you look for, right? It's not, and it's pretty ridiculous, in my opinion, to just belittle anybody, whether it's New Zealand or the States, for taking a less than trophy animal. I mean, come on. What's that all about? I don't get that at all. So,
when you're hunting animals, like one of the questions was, well, how many nannies did you take?
Yeah.
And I didn't shoot any nannies. You didn't shoot any either. We're committed to packing out what meat we could pack out. It's really tough this idea of just killing a bunch of nannies and leaving them there because it's part of this cull process or this invasive species management and so on. It gets real. I don't like it. I don't like wasting or killing an animal just to kill it. I don't know quite enough about New Zealand yet either to understand what that culture, what the norms are and how I just bring my culture and my understanding and how I see animals and hunting to the table and apply it there.
Right. And maybe, that's how it should be. You kill a bull, you kill a couple nannies, but it does not feel right to me because of how we've grown up here. It's just not our management practice. That would leave a sick feeling in my stomach to just go out and shoot nannies and leave them on the hill. Just couldn't do it.
Right. And it's not like everyone said to do that, but it happens that, there's some posters and some of the things that say for every bull tar you shoot like
3 nannies.
3 nannies. Well, there's no way you're packing 4 tar off that mountain and surviving, I mean, and yet they have a different situation over there where they don't have predators.
Predators, yeah. There are no predators there at all.
And so without human management, you are allowing an invasive species or non-native species to impact the native ecology. But I don't know where, for me though, the idea of killing a nanny or a kid and leaving it there or even killing it and bringing it home. Like here, honestly, I don't take very many cow elk. I don't take very many does. Now, if you're on the whitetail side of the fence, I mean, they'll shoot 25 in a day, but you're talking about an animal that's as rampant as rabbits over there. Where over here in the West, where we grew up, you don't take too many does. And if you do, you have a special doe tag or a special cow tag for that. And you fulfill the quotas and the harvest rates that the game management units have established. It's part of an overall plan. It's not willy-nilly, And shooting only mature animals, I struggle with that. This whole only shooting mature or trophy animals.
I just don't get it. I think, like I said, everybody's got a little process they go through, and this is new country. Going over there and just targeting giants. Yeah, that would have been a challenge, but honestly, I think we had enough challenge just getting around through that country, finding bulls. What we felt were trophies to us. That was what I was looking for in that trip. Now that'll probably change with more trips that I take to New Zealand. I'll look for different things, look for a different country, look for a different maturity level. You've killed a lot of
mule deer at this point. Mm-hmm. You're not really interested in taking 100-inch buck,
right?
You're gonna come home empty rather than do that, especially when the freezer's full. That's the evolution of a hunter.
Well, it's like, when you first start out, I mean, you're learning all these different things. These are totally new animals for us. So, it took a while to learn mule deer. You're not killing only mature animals when you're starting out.
Right.
You should take every advantage possible and figure out their behaviors and, just figure out, how it works and how to kill the darn things. Just like this tar hunt, we learned a crud ton with just one big trip in 14 days. And kind of walk away from that. I was beyond happy with how it all went with the animals that we were able to take. And I thought we took some great animals. Yeah. Some of them weren't, the oldest Billy on the mountain, but great animals all around. And again, you're right. We took every scrap of meat. We got every scrap of meat back home in the freezers. Mm-hmm. And that was,
it's unfortunate too, because I just think it's disgusting for hunters to when you go out and you hunt and you have, in the United States especially, you have a license or a tag. It's your hunt. You get to choose within the confines of the law on what you're going to kill. If it's a buck tag, you can kill anything that fits the legal description. It could be 2 years old. It could be 8 years old. But it's your hunt. You get to decide. It's your personal experience. It's what you want it to be. And for someone else I'm so bothered when someone tries to push their ideals onto me. What they think is a fulfilling hunt, their way onto me. It just bugs me. Sure. I don't handle that well. Anyway, we end up taking, you got a couple of tar and a chamois. Yep. And your chamois is like 15 years old.
Yeah.
And I think I've read that they live to about 17 years old in the wild, or can live 17 years in the wild. Yours was old, dude. It was approaching those final stages of life, man. Yep. And it's crazy to think you took an animal that's been on the mountain that long.
I know. 15 years. 14 or 15 years. Yeah, it's a long time.
It's cool, dude.
That was such a bonus. It was to find that chamois. I wasn't expecting to find it, and quite honestly, we weren't in an area known for numbers of chamois at all. Few around, but no, that was pretty cool to find that one, or find some and then find that one. But
we ended up, and this is a learning experience, we did recover your tar, and it was really scary. I'm just going to say it. It was scary. I think getting to that last tar and getting it off the mountain was probably the sketchiest, scariest part of the entire trip. So I was glad when that was over.
That was like I say, I can't wait to watch the film, because that was a day for the books. The entire day, from starting out that morning to go up, and then where we ended up that night at 2 a.m. So far away from where we started. That riverbed and that whole adventure trying to get down and out of there was insane.
That was a night for the record books for me. One of the most incredible hikes and
night hikes.
Yeah. I mean, we were
with fully loaded, each had a tar on our back.
And a camp. Very
heavy packs. Boulder fields. A narrow canyon. It was just gnarly.
There were parts where you had to drop 6-7 feet
and hand your pack down.
Hand your pack to the next guy. Yeah. But you had to free drop spots, and there was no going back once you dropped. It was a one-way trip.
And the top end started out frozen, like slippery rocks, and then the bottom end just ended up
slimy, moss covered.
Like we're just going through the river. I don't even want to think about. I mean, could have had a clicker as to how many times we crossed a river or a creek. That trip.
It was incredible. It was an incredible. I don't think unless you were there, it's hard to realize to know what happened there. I mean, would you say, in terms of all the pack outs you've done, and you've done some nasty ones, where does that one rank?
That late night, that was tough, man. Because because I'd never been there before. I mean, and you just don't know what's down below. Thinking back to the Green Tree thing, it's like we're going down this canyon that we hadn't been up. We're relying on, what is it, NZ Topo 50?
Mhm.
Relying
Yeah,
on
right.
that. It's kind of like the Onyx that we have here. So going completely on that and just looking at it and trying to figure our way down. And I mean, dropping packs, looking for the next 50 yards where we can get down a little bit further. Yeah, I mean,
And we're
that'll always be one of the gnarliest ones,
Yeah.
just because of that terrain, for sure.
Yeah.
It wasn't all the way into the night, 5, 6 a.m., but it got to 2 a.m.
It was technical.
It was
This is very
it was
technical.
very slimy
Yeah.
and wet
and
and heavy.
and heavy. There were points where there's one point where I remember there was like a neck deep section of the river and then like a 10-foot waterfall or 20-foot, but there's only one little rock there about ankle deep. And then, and then if you jump that 3-foot deep, yeah. And I'm looking at, I'm like, I can make that all day long. But if you slip, you're underwater and you're off a waterfall
Right.
kind of situation, right? Or you could walk 6 feet higher up the creek bed and you're probably going to get wet to mid calf. Almost certain you will. But that's the maximum damage that can happen.
Yes.
And I'm like, damn it, I don't want to get wet above my boot up to my mid calf. And I can make this, but the consequences are dire if you don't.
Your entire camp plus your entire body is soaked.
Like Green Tree.
Right. In the water, possibly getting pinned down because that water was ripping and trying to
And
pull
glacial
that back off.
runoffs.
Yeah, it's
Snow.
cold.
And I remember I'm looking at it and you're like, Brian, over here. And I'm looking over
Don't
there.
risk it, man.
And I'm
Don't
like,
risk it.
dang it, Ryan. I can make this all day long. But if you don't, if you slip. So I was like, fine. And I walked 6 feet, got my leg wet and just marked.
Yeah.
And then
But you didn't die.
no, and it turned out, another mile down, I ended up having to get wet no matter what. So it was fine. And
Yeah, it got to a point where you're just going across the river.
yeah,
Yeah.
just for safety.
Because there was no other way to do it.
You can't afford to, with 100 and something pound pack, to jump from mossy rock to mossy rock at some point, especially when the legs got real shaky, to try to stay dry. It was like you need to just have a firm foot planted,
Right.
even if it's
Safer
underwater.
Safer to get wet.
But we were going to get picked up by a chopper at daylight the next morning. So that's part of why we had to do this death hike in the night, was we had to get to the area where the chopper could pick us up. And that was our trip home. And there's a little weather window. You got to get there.
Yep.
So we roll up to that bivvy.
And it's not one of the, what did you call them?
Standard huts.
Standard huts?
It's a basic hut.
It's a baby hut. It's a 2-bunk hut, very small. But this hut had some dry firewood
It
in
did.
it, which was really, really nice.
I feel like
we were
we hit
able to
the
dry
jackpot.
everything out that night.
And we'd
Almost.
slowly been starving throughout the week because we didn't really bring enough food for the whole trip. Thought we'd be eating a lot more meat, but
Mm-hmm.
we ended up leaving it at camp, or as we hiked the mountains, and didn't get our animals until the last day. And anyway, things didn't work out, but that was actually a really blessed. You know how you've done those kind of hikes, and you show up in that, and you get the fire going, and you strip down your clothes, and there was food in there, dude. I mean, it was glorious.
It was. And it was just like a small amount of food, but it was food that we didn't have. And it was great. And we chowed down. And I mean, we had to have that fire going for a little bit just to dry everything out, because it was just humid and wet.
Yeah.
Really hard to stay dry in those conditions.
It was real frustrating, though, because I didn't have enough camera battery or memory to capture that whole thing. And we were so tired. And here's the issue when you're filming is a lot of times the camera doesn't come out, especially when we're filming and hunting. The camera doesn't come out in those most gnarly, the most rugged, the most treacherous times because you're busy doing the activity.
Just negotiating our way down.
So there's really not much from that night.
No, really wasn't.
You know, and I regret it. I wish we had just run a headlamp, but I really didn't have any battery left. I just kind of was up against the wall, and we had to delete a whole bunch of video from previous days, and it was a rookie mistake. I got the camera from Luke. Luke handed it to me, and we get up on the mountain, and I'm like, oh crap, the card is full, and there's not a spare one in this camera, and it was just a mess.
Yeah,
but we got what we got, and it's enough to tell the story and to show the trip. We got choppered out, and there was leg one.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep.
And then we got a hotel room.
Extremely, like the feeling of extremely successful first part of our trip with those animals and how we got them out of there.
Yep. 3 bull tar and a chamois. And we got all the meat, all the hides, skulls out there, camped back, and we were able to hit a hotel. Yep. The chopper dropped us off, took care of that, got to a hotel in the local city there, and we got one with a kitchenette.
Yep, we had to find one specifically with a kitchenette so that we
I think it was $100 US for the hotel room.
Something like that, yeah. Yep.
For a night. So we spent the night there, and with the nice kitchenette there, we were able to boil the skulls. We butchered all the meat and put them into gallon Ziploc bags. And we wrapped the hides in cellophane wrap, saran wrap kind of stuff, plastic wrap, and duct taped everything. Got it in double bagged in the garbage bags.
Yep.
And the skulls were, Ryan was really working on those, boiled those, and then you had to scrape them, spend hours like scraping them and then bleaching them.
Yeah, I didn't have access to like a pressure washer, which always makes it easy, but it was just scraping, and then found a little bit of hair bleach that we're able to do a little bleaching as well. So, but fortunately, we found a super nice lady that had a little pub and gave us free reign of her freezer. So we were able to kind of soak everything in that freezer and get it completely rock hard frozen.
Right. And, you know, we had heard from Brian Barney and Remy and stuff, that you could throw your meat into like a Yeti soft cooler, you know, your frozen meat, and throw it on a soft cooler and just check it as luggage.
Yep.
But I think you're kind of maxing out about 40 pounds there. So I brought a Yeti Panga, the 75 and the 100, and those are like dry bags, like rubber duffel dry bags.
Those things were perfect for that, for getting them frozen. It was the perfect size for weight, for not exceeding our weight limit as luggage also. And then, to have it be a complete dry bag, just in case on the way back you get any thaw or anything like that, there's not going to be any issues.
And that's where the airlines really freaked out is blood and you know, all of that.
Completely contained in those Pangas.
They're airtight and watertight, so both inside and out. So whatever's in there isn't going to leak out.
Yeah.
So we when we got everything bagged and stuff and organized, it's got a hide, it's got all the meat, it's all, you know, bagged up. Took it, put it in the freezer at the local tavern restaurant area, and they were super cool inside the Panga, you know, because they didn't want it contaminating anything they have. So it was nice and clean. We brought them the Panga, and we're like, look, we want to bring this and put it in your freezer. And they're like, well, what's in it? And we're like, well, goats.
They were pretty intrigued by the whole.
Yeah. But when I think when they saw how it was all bagged and super clean and there was no blood anywhere and it was really well done.
Right.
That they were like, yeah, no problem. And they were gracious. So we put it in there, froze it solid, and then we were able to take that on the airline.
Yep.
And
that was a big point of emphasis. Like, we wanted to make it look professional. Like, we didn't want any issues coming back, where they could possibly take your skull or your hide or your meat. So getting everything bagged up real tight in those Ziplocs, and then double bagging everything, getting them frozen rock hard. Just nice little professional packages, and then getting those skulls really cleaned up and bleached, look like it came from a taxidermist, as well as those hides.
The U.S. customs, as well as the Australian, or as well as the New Zealand guys, they were like, where do you get these? What souvenir shop did you buy these tar heads, these skulls at? These are super cool. They didn't even think that it was that I hunted them. They thought I bought them at a shop, because I brought them back. I checked the frozen meat and the hide in the panga. It was about 70 pounds. Now it can't exceed 70 pounds.
We were limited out on. I was as well. I had 2 bags completely maxed out. 70 pounds.
Now a 70-pound bag is an oversized bag, because technically it can't exceed 50 pounds. Then you have to pay the oversized fee, but it can only max out at 70 pounds for safety. So an airline person will break their back if they pick up more than 70 pounds. So that's the max load. And I think that was $200 per bag as well.
Yeah.
So, I fit, all the meat, hides and stuff into a 70 Yeti. I think I used a Panga 100.
I used a 75 is what I used. Yep.
And froze everything, I believe. Anyway, it was under 70 pounds for the whole thing. And it was $200. And did you have to have more than one bag?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we had Luke take a bag.
Yeah. Yeah, because the hides are heavy, man.
Yeah.
The hides were beyond what I thought they were going to be for weight. They're heavy. Those big old bull tar, that's a lot of weight there. But
in the end, we flew home with 5 bull tar and 1 chamois, right?
Yeah.
And that included the hides, the meat, and the skulls I took on my carry-on.
Yep, I took all the skulls in my carry-on as well. So I had 4 skulls in my carry-on bag.
Yeah.
But they were all clean, like white.
Yeah.
And then we cellophaned them, and then
what
a
was
little
nice
bit of duct tape. So it just looked
all
like
the work was
little
done
package.
too. When you got home, you didn't have to screw around with it later.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
So that was pretty cool. So after we spent a couple days in the hotel, got in touch with Remy, and he put us onto a walk-in area that wasn't far from our hotel.
Yep. He gave us some options. He laid out a list. And again, Remy is so knowledgeable of the whole area. I mean, it's like his backyard now. He's got a place, not just a little storage place, and he's just got it all figured out. And there's all these on the DOC website. They have all these little walk-in areas, very clearly defined.
Parking area, where the trails are.
Yeah, all this. And here I wouldn't even consider that. I would think, it's going to be overhunted. It's going to be not a place I'd ever want to go. And that was a little bit what was running through my head here. But then you get there and you're like, man, not even close.
I know.
There's tar here, lots of them. And it seems like the access is too easy, but it's, I don't know, just a few miles in and you're seeing animals. And that was an area that we should have had our bows. We should have put some stocks on. And
we didn't bring bows because our other experience had been so different.
Yeah.
And we were kind of expecting to find tar at the peaks of these snow-capped mountains again.
Yep.
But for some reason in this area,
they're
all on these low grasslands.
Down in the lowland. We didn't have to go to the top. So.
And we saw billions of tar.
Yeah.
In comparison to the scant few we've hunted up in those rugged mountains, over here in these tussock grasslands, there was just tar galore.
We found a lot of tar. It was pretty cool
To watch
the bulls in there all puffed up like grizzly bears and just.
And I had been able to watch. I had gone the year earlier to New Zealand under a different kind of setup where we went with Cordrona Safaris, and the guys down there took us to a public land area, but it was still an area where it was low grasslands like that. It wasn't anything like the Southern Alps we had been in.
Yeah.
And I was able to watch tahr do cool stuff and be
They're a fun animal to
close.
watch, man. I like watching rut and mule deer in November, but those tahr were just awesome, especially when you had like several good bulls together and they get close to each other and their hair just goes on end and they look like a grizzly bear. Like you can scan
With horns.
the mountainside. And and when their hair stands on end, their horns are actually tucked in and you can't even quite see how long they are. They're just kind of into that big,
So
thick
neat.
mane. So fun to watch. And the numbers were incredible. Never in a million years would I think, you could just walk in a few miles and see all these tahr
With a bow.
in public land.
And we belly
Easily.
crawled. I told you, I was like, Ryan, last time when I was here, you could just crawl up to them pretty easily. As long as you stay below the height of the grass, they really let you get away with murder.
So in the end,
And you're like, no, we can't do that. And I was like, these aren't mule deer, Ryan. You're like, mule deer would pick us off. And I'm like, they'll look right at us and then they'll look away.
yeah. So at the end, we were just like, we had tahr in front of us, like, oh, we'll just play around and see what we can get away with. And we crawled right in on them and could have easily, stuck one with a bow.
A
really
cracker
good-
of a bull
A really good
with a
bull.
bow.
But it was fun just, again, like testing the limits and seeing what you can get away with. And clearly in that grass, you stay below the grass line, even as loud as it is. Some of these groups of tahr, there's, 20, 30 in a group. They're making all kinds of ruckus in there. And, it's just like almost made for bow hunting down in that country with those animals.
So summarize for me how the two hunts differed in what's because they're both great but in different ways.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the challenge of the country on our first little stint. That was fun. It wasn't the challenge. I mean, we had rifles, obviously, or we had a rifle. The challenge was navigating that country, finding tahr because there was very few, and then being able to recover them and then pull them out of that country. That was as much challenge as you really needed. The other place, I liked it, but it almost felt like going from the Rockies, though.
The undoable.
Like the Rocky Mountains, the big steep Rocky Mountains, down to a whitetail field. Because it was rolling hills. There was no difficulty really in
No danger.
the navigating. There was no getting cliffed out. It was still steep and, still dealing with that grass. But plenty of animals to stalk and just a fantastic place to go play around with a bow and put stalks in on animals. So,
and on that hunt, you could sit there and you could squabble over whether you're going to shoot a 12-inch or 11-inch, 12-inch bull or shoot for something 13 and bigger. Like you were really squabbling over half-inch and inch differences, and they all just looked big to us.
Well, in that point of the trip, we were getting our feelers out. Like we could tell, okay, now that we've seen enough, we've had our hands on a few of them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
Now we're starting.
that's a good bull.
Yeah.
That one there, he's not quite what that one is, and it took us a while to figure it out. It just naturally
You're
does.
still splitting hairs a little bit because
11 to 12 inch or
you're
13.
talking an inch or two.
Because you're looking for, eventually you figured out you look for that curve in on the back.
Yeah.
You look for certain little things, thickness of the base, all that kind of stuff. And that curvature in the back where it kind of hooks down and then curves in, that was something that I learned while I was there. That's what you kind of look for in those older
That's
age
where you get
class bulls.
the few more inches that the older bulls have.
And prior to that, though, I was seeing nannies and kids, and then this big old giant grizzly bear looking thing with a big blonde mane, and then with horns up there. Looked huge. This looked like an old mature, but it was like a
5-year-old.
5-year-old.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
still a good bull, but not.
yeah, the bigger ones, they carried their mane like all the way through their whole body almost. They had so much coat.
Quite honestly, I think looking back, though, to answer your question, I really enjoyed the challenge of the steep part, but I liked how we did it. I liked seeing both. If I went back, I'd like to see the roughness of that country again, split that trip in half, do the chopper trip, come back down, and do a hike-in, walk-in trip, and get a little bit of both.
Me too. They satisfy different aspects of the hunt, you know, different.
You definitely want to get the rough and rugged out of the way first.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go there after.
Yeah.
You're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be a little bit winded after those mountains.
I would say that the easier hunt, a guy of average conditioning can do it. You don't have to be super fit. If you have a rifle, especially. But that other hunt is easily, I think, fairly easily doable with a bow.
Yeah.
There was so much game opportunity. They'd be looking the wrong way. You could sneak in above them. I mean, the wind was pretty predictable.
Yeah, very, very conducive for a bow. And also a little bit cheaper because you don't have to get a
There's
chopper.
No chopper.
It's just renting a car and
drive to it.
Going and hitting a walking area.
Again, you just go to the DOC page, and a bunch of those places, that's all it was.
Yep. I mean, we went to a walking area, and we're hiking in, and there's a couple of guys hiking out, and they've got like 1/4 of a stag.
They cut it off right at the rump. So they had the back legs, basically, the butt.
Yeah.
And that's it. They left the rest of the meat there.
Went in there and
shot it
and came out. And
I was joking with one of my buddies from New Zealand, and I was saying on his podcast, he has a podcast in New Zealand, Ryan O'Connor, and he was saying, I was like, dude, what is it with you guys not using backpacks? Like, why do you got to turn all your animals into backpacks and sling them over your shoulder?
Figure that out myself.
It's like,
why do they carry them
like that? What the heck? Like, that is not the most efficient way to do this.
Yeah, it's so common. Every magazine you see while we were there is like, there's an animal slung onto a guy's back. It's just their culture, I guess. And
they turn it into a backpack, cut the legs, do all this stuff, and then boom, they carried it out, and it looks like it's a miserable way to carry a load. I'm spoiled running Stone Glacier.
We're all breaking them down, taking them, the muscles off, and just boned out.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just different.
But what I like about the other area, like I said, you don't have to have a prime level of fitness. You can get right into it, and there's so many game animals that there's ample opportunity. You'll be seeing and chasing bulls, most of the day, most days.
And the likelihood of getting hurt is so much less.
Yeah.
Like if you are going to do a solo trip, I would not have any reservations about going into one of those walk-in areas and going in and just chasing around with a bow by myself.
And these guys that were hiking out, they were hiking out with stag, and they were saying that they saw a bunch of red deer in there. There was a lot of pigs in there.
Pigs. Yeah.
Yep. We saw tons of tahr. The other area we were in, we ran into tahr, chamois, like everything's on the menu, which is pretty cool about New Zealand because, you just you can be very opportunistic and you can hunt whatever you come across.
Yeah. And that was what was cool. After talking with Remy, he's like, man, you go to this spot, you could find a fallow deer, a giant fallow deer. You could find a 13-inch bull. You just don't know. You
Bob
find
Marley
a stag. It's like he's rattled up. And then another area you may only find tahr. And then it's just different, or tahr and stag. But so much opportunities there.
So we did that other hunt. We had to do another night hike and get out of there.
That was a brutal night hike too.
And we shot our two biggest bulls in that area, by far bigger bulls. And they're nice bulls. Yep. I don't know how big mine is.
Sitting
12 and a half.
It looks good on my mantle.
It's a nice mature, I guess anything over 12 inches is pretty darn.
It was 12 and a half, almost 12 and 3/4, I think it was. Just really cool dark colored horns to it. It's got that swoop to the back, just a great bull.
He's got a really heavy mane or heavy coat.
Almost a brownish gray color to it versus
what a fun fact is, the blonde-haired bulls get more sex than the dark-haired bulls. How does that make you feel? You're brunette.
Huh.
You got brown hair.
How does that work?
I don't know, but they've done studies and they've shown that the lighter the mane,
Yeah.
the more nannies they breed with.
Well,
Yeah, the more the nannies are receptive.
Huh.
So it's part of.
Well, that's weird because some of the bigger bulls we saw didn't have blonde manes. They had those dark gray, brown.
And I think some of that is age, right? They may have been blonde earlier, but they just
Come
turned
to think of
gray.
it, you remember your bull?
Like I'm bald.
Yes, you are.
I had
Very bald.
I had different hair earlier. in life.
Your bigger bull was chasing kids around the hill.
It was an old pervert. There's no doubt. It was
had
herding up
babies.
babies and breeding them.
Yeah,
Full on breeding
while
them.
the blonde had the group.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, he was too old. He's picking up the extras. I mean, he had all busted up horns and stuff too. He had some age on him. And this is something I wanted to bring up too. Those bulls up there were savvy. Those old bulls we were chasing in the grasslands.
Yeah.
And they gave us the slip, Ryan. They would hold like a quail in the brush.
Dude, yeah. Never thought they would do that. And then you see it before your eyes. Like they literally just park it in some grass and they hunker down and expect you to walk right by.
And freeze.
Yeah.
They hold their heads down and duck and hide.
Yep.
And they do. They let you walk right by them.
Yep.
I didn't think they would do that until I saw it. And the reason we knew is because, you could see forever. And there's just a slight ridge where it disappears. And then you would see that tar. There's no exit points where you wouldn't see it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, it went over, disappeared.
Gone. Yeah.
Well, he hid in the grass.
Yep.
And then we actually saw it happen and got screwed.
Very close. Very close.
Got burned.
Yeah.
So, you know what? I gotta say, I have a lot of respect for these tar. I've always said goats are one of the dumbest, smartest animals you've ever been around. If you've raised goats and you see them figure something out, or you can see their little brains thinking, At the same time, there's some of the dumbest animals, they'll eat a tin can. You're like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I as well. A lot of respect for those things and seeing some of the country they live in. I'm really glad we got to see them in the high elevation, top of the mountain type terrain versus just down in the grasslands. It was really cool just seeing how they live up there and what they can actually live in that environment versus the lowlands. Night and day.
The difference,
they seem to thrive up there.
The difference, though, is it's sort of like seeing a herd of elk up in the highest 12,000 foot alpine, and you see a bull with 8 cows, and they're doing their thing. That's a whole different thing than when you see them in the grasslands in Arizona, and there's 300 elk in a field.
Mm-hmm.
The rut frenzy is a different sort of thing, and elk make sounds and vocalizations and their behaviors. It's like a view into another side of elk, right?
Yeah.
And that's how this lowland tar hunt was. You got to observe tar do things that we never saw them do up in those scant mountains with the scant group up in those mountains.
Right. No, and the numbers I think dictated that because there was so many bulls together. I think at one point we saw, was there 8 or so bulls together, fairly close together. And they were all just puffed up and strutting around. And it was just fun to watch them, just how they interacted with each other.
When you took your bull, which is some of the coolest video, your last big bull, that big bull, man, when they're up in the cliffs and the rocks and they're strutting.
Yep. I mean, getting up into those rocks just like you'd watch a mountain goat kind of navigate those cliffs. Yep. You just go right up it. No problem at all. Yep.
The other thing that we saw, though, was when we belly crawled up in those, I don't know how many were on that ridge. I mean, from where we were at all the way down the ridge. And remember that one that jumped in the air and did a 360?
Yeah.
Spin?
Yep.
And, like a pony?
Yep. And you had been telling me about the whistle. We finally got to the point where all right, let's see how far we can push this. And they did blow out of there. we got to hear that whistle and what that was all about. Pretty unique whistle for that type of animal. Almost sounds like a marmot.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that was kind of their warning.
Yep.
So,
yep, absolutely.
are we going to get kicked out of this park?
I think we might be. We might have to do our podcast on logistics and supplies a little bit later.
Yeah, we sure are.
Yep.
All right.
Hey. So thanks for tuning into the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave us a comment. Leave us a review on iTunes. That's always cool. And,
no, I hate those iTunes reviews. People are mean to me. And I can't get rid of them.
Brent gets one or two mean comments and he's broken.
Whatever.
Yeah, I'm kind of used to that. So whatever.
You were an unsympathetic ear.
Yeah. It's like welcome to social life, social media. Anyway, I think that's it. Yep. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Stay gritty.